set piece, every corner that came in, a City player got his head to it. So at least you've got to, set pieces are the easiest thing to defend. Obviously, sometimes it happens that somebody else gets first to the ball. But you've got to be there. You've got to challenge the player, even if he gets first to the ball. So he's challenged and he can't direct his header. And this is a team that, 3 or 4 years ago, been to the semi-final of the Champions League. So they are not novices in this competition. They've been there before. They've done it before. But for all of City's brilliance, that was shambolic tonight. Yeah, so it's hard to assess fully Manchester City's performance, given the quality of the opposition and the way Leipzig really didn't turn up. But how would you assess it, Lisa, in terms of their chances now going all the way in the competition?
Well, I think it's a statement, and I think it's a statement that Pep Guardiola challenged his players to make. I mean, he spoke out during the week about Haaland's performances, about De Bruyne. You can see the impact he's had on Grealish's game, even though he was under par tonight. But, I mean, I think for City, the expectation is there one way or the other. They just have to go and do it. I mean, that's just the bottom line for them now. It's now or never. This is probably the best chance they have. PSG are already gone out of the competition. Either Real Madrid or Liverpool will go out tomorrow. So, there's some big hitters gone already. And I think, look, if Pep's success at Manchester City, regardless, will be measured on whether or not he wins the Champions League. And he can talk all he wants in the media about whether that's fair or unfair. It is the benchmark. He's won it before with Barcelona, so and they have got the quality of the players there that can do it. Yeah,
I mean, it is regarded as the world's top club competition, and the one that all the top clubs want to win. They want to qualify for it every year. All their league campaigns are based around qualifying for the Champions League, and sometimes in some countries, Diddy, it seems secondary to win your title. It's to qualify for the Champions League. But the stars are aligning in many ways for Pep and Manchester City, aren't they? Because, I mean, first of all, that extremely talented squad has a clean bill of health at the moment, so it's a good time of the season for them to be fully fit.
Yeah, but at the same time, you want them fit in 8 weeks. They could have played the second 11 and would have won the game tonight. So you need these guys fit in 8 weeks' time. But obviously, it's a frightening picture and thought when you look who's coming on, who's on the bench.
Indeed.
But I think, of course, it's a statement to beat Leipzig 7-0 at home. But I think it also bears a danger that, everybody said, oh, this is their year now, because even though they scored 8 goals in the two legs against Leipzig, now it doesn't give them a bye in the quarterfinal. They still have to play a quarterfinal. They have to beat 2 teams in the quarters and the semis, and then obviously in a one-off game, if they were to get to the final, they've got to beat a team. And have they got a better chance than the other years? I'm not too sure. Only because they won 7-0 tonight doesn't make me think they've got a better chance. They probably were favourites 2 or 3 times in the last 4 or 5 years, where everybody thought they are the team to beat. They couldn't get it done, and I'm not yet convinced that this year it'll be a different story. And yes, there's some big hitters out, but if you look at Napoli, if you look at Benfica, Bayern Munich been brilliant against Paris. So, there's some tough opponents. I don't think they need any luck because they are probably with Bayern Munich. They are the 2 teams to beat. But they could face him in the next round, which would be a very good game. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's obviously far more serious opposition to come for Manchester City in this competition. And I suppose if we just cast our minds back to last weekend, where they made hard work of beating Crystal Palace away. So, I mean, they're not always this sort of marauding, convincing Manchester City that we saw tonight against a pretty weak Leipzig.
Yeah, but Crystal Palace were set up differently, and Crystal Palace were sitting in compact, protecting that central space. I mean, you could have driven 20 buses through the space that was available through the middle of the pitch today, and the chances that they were taking when they were playing out. I mean, at times they made it easy. They were pressing, but they didn't even have to press that hard at times just to go and win the ball back or to force the errors. So I think there was an element of naivety in the way Leipzig approached the game tonight. I think you have to look at Manchester City's record at home. And you have to pay that a little bit of respect. And Leipzig came under strength with some key players injured and still went. And look, you can admire a manager for committing to their philosophy, but there's times where you have to play the opponent that you're playing against and get the result. And I just think there was an element of naivety in the way that Leipzig set up and approached the game this evening.
Yeah, did Marco Rose fail to react to what was happening during that game tonight, did he? Because first of all, we saw this persistence with playing it out from the back, but they consistently gave the ball away to Manchester City, and they were making it easy for City to launch attack after attack, wave after wave. City could press higher and higher and higher all the time, and the manager didn't seem to react to that.
Yeah, and what I did notice there, what Lisa just said, that they tried to play out from the back. You know, when you go to Manchester City, first 20 minutes, kick the ball long, play in City's half, try to win a second ball, and keep him away from goal as much as possible. And City kept 3 or 4 players up, and they tried to play out, and all they did, they passed it twice, gave it back to the keeper, and actually, when the penalty was given, there was a goalkeeper kicking the ball when he wanted to play the ball to the centre-back. The goalkeeper kicking the ball out of play for a corner. And it's hard enough to play against City as it is. Yeah. But then if you give away silly corner kicks and free kicks and lose the ball 20 or 25 yards from goal, you know, how do you expect to get something out of the game? So the play now from the back, I didn't understand. The time to make a change was probably after 15 or 20 minutes before the first goal went in, because I think they needed Paulsen, who came on in the second half, because you needed an outlet. You needed a player, when you do kick it long, who at least challenges for the ball, because Werner obviously is at a physical disadvantage. You know, I can't take any positives out of it. There was from start to finish a non-event from Leipzig. And I've got to say, very disappointed, because I thought if they believe they can get something, at least they can make it hard for City. But it was far too easy. And but what he said before, I think it's hard to measure what City did, because it was a non-event today. It was a golfing class. I don't think we learned as much about City tonight as people may think.
Finally, Lisa.
I think actually the way City set up tonight was good. I think we talked before the game about Pep being analysed and maybe overthinking his tactics, but I think the way they created the overload in midfield by moving John Stones into that area, it's exactly the way they actually played against Crystal Palace at the weekend, with Stones from the right back position sitting inside alongside Rodri, and Gundogan able to push forward. And Leipzig could not deal with the number of bodies in the middle of the pitch, and that wasn't a problem they had in the first leg, but they certainly had a problem, and he didn't seem to know how to change it and fix it. And I think that's where the majority of the dominance came from Man City's performance tonight.
Yeah, but Leipzig was so bad today, I think I could have picked the tactics tonight for City.
OK, well, Pep will have plenty more tactical tweaks before this Champions League campaign is over, but the 7-0 scoreline for Manchester City fans will make it a pretty memorable evening for them, one way or the other. Yeah, interesting there, the comments about Grumpy Kevin, because, I mean, he hasn't been having the season to the same standard as maybe previous years, and he hadn't a great World Cup with Belgium. But did we see Kevin De Bruyne maybe being prompted a little bit by Pep in the lead up to this game? Did we see him sort of get back to basics tonight and possibly improve as a result?
Yeah, and that's exactly what Pep said. He said that Kevin De Bruyne needs to get back to basics, and if he gets back to basics, then the rest of the game will come. And I think what Pep wants is, you know, maybe early in the season when Erling Haaland came in, that De Bruyne to Haaland partnership was quite easy, and then Pep talked about rhythm. And interesting hearing Ruben Diaz talk about the rhythm there again. Like that's a real Pep word, that the rhythm was disturbed by the World Cup. But and Kevin didn't, and Belgium didn't have a particularly good World Cup, and he hasn't been in the best form since he came back. But I think that what we saw with De Bruyne tonight is his ability to control the game. But the players around him, like Pep doesn't want to build his team around any one player, and he doesn't want his team to be predictable. And I think maybe in the build-up to the World Cup, when Haaland was free scoring and new to the Premier League, that partnership was really effective. And then teams started to figure out how to stop him getting the ball. And then Man City started to become predictable. And then when De Bruyne and players are going more quickly to Haaland, looking for him a bit earlier than they might normally, the way Man City usually play, then they became predictable. And Pep doesn't want to be predictable. So I think that's what he was talking about, the basics, the passing, moving, making sure that you're an option. He wants all 11 players involved in the game in every moment and contributing to what can happen as opposed to what is happening.
Would it be fair to suggest, Didi, that Pep's approach when it comes to player management can be fairly ruthless and possibly has to be? I mean, we saw it with Alex Ferguson's hugely successful term at Manchester United. He was ruthless. But is Pep cut from the same cloth in some ways? Because we see the ease at which he let go of the likes of Zinchenko, the likes of Sterling, Jesus also went, and Cancelo. I mean, he does make some pretty big decisions when it comes to player management.
Well, I think you've got to be ruthless because you've got to make these decisions. If you feel that this player shouldn't be in the team anymore, shouldn't be at the club anymore, you've got to move him on. That's your job. Because if you think he upsets the dynamics of the team, then he's got to go. But at the same time, because you compare him to Ferguson, Mourinho was the same. But I think the main thing with the success of Mourinho and Ferguson was based that the players would go through a brick wall for these managers. And with Guardiola, sometimes I'm not too sure whether he's got the same relationship with the players as a Ferguson or a Mourinho had in their successful days. Because I think when you speak to players, when you hear players speak, who played under him in Munich or at other clubs, that warmth between him and the players, I don't think he's got that to the same extent as a Mourinho or a Ferguson.
So they could be ruthless and yet have a better bond with the players?
You've got to be ruthless, but at the same time, you've got to have a relationship with the players.
Yeah.
And, what you hear, I don't think he's at the same level as other managers in the past. Because if you look at his record, obviously he's done he won the Champions League, Barcelona, but in the last 10 years, with Bayern Munich and Manchester City, he's only been to one final. Because end of the day, when you get to a semi-final, when you get to a final, it's about how much do the players want it for the manager. And there were situations in the past where a team knew that the manager is going. For example, when Heynckes left Bayern Munich, they said, we do it for the manager. And they won the treble. And they beat Dortmund in the final because they said, we've got to do it for him. And his send-off will be the Champions League title. Now, with Guardiola, I don't think that's always been the case. Because if you manage these teams and only been to one Champions League final, then there's got to be something in it. For all his tactical genius and what people say, I understand that. But end of the day is how much do the players want to do it for the manager? And I think other managers probably got a slight advantage on him there.
So, Lisa, would you agree that personal dimension, that might be the ingredient that Pep has been missing? I mean, he reached 3 semi-finals with Bayern Munich. He's reached 1 final with Manchester City. Otherwise, they've bowed out round of 16, quarter-finals and semi-finals.
I think what's interesting about Pep is that he won't build his team around any one player. So, and a lot of players that come in, like Grealish, Haaland, they've been big fish in the clubs that they've come into. And as soon as they come into Man City, he takes that away from them. So they're no longer the big fish. And it doesn't matter who it is, like Haaland there has the potential to go and smash records and he takes them off. He's like, you can give more. It's almost like he pulls them back to say that there's more, there'll be another day, and he'll never let them kind of go like that. You could let him go full throttle tonight. And he didn't. Look, there's smartness in that, where you're managing your players and you're rotating your squad and you're looking after recovery, because there's Burnley at the weekend and there's going to be a lot more games to come, and he's a fully fit squad. So he wants to make sure that everybody is available. But I think what Pep does is, like some teams, you can build around, you'll build around one key player or 2 key players, but he just doesn't do that. And he'll never allow any player to believe that they're the difference, or they're the player. And because it's also a sign of weakness.
Well, I think that's part of his downfall. I think when you say, and when you've got these players, you've got to cherish having these players, and you want these players to express themselves, because they are the ones, a Grealish, a Haaland, a De Bruyne, whoever they are the ones, when it comes to a semi-final, they have one split second, they've got a moment of genius, they can win you a game.
Yeah.
And when Lisa says he's reining them in and you're part of a collective, because he wants to, too often he wants to make it about himself. And he wants to do things, he wants to do something outrageously where people say, well, that was a great idea, but actually he lost the game. For example, when he left Riyadh, and he did it at that final tournament, I think they got beat by Lyon. He did something crazy as well. He wants to win games. No, the Champions League, the players will win the Champions League. The manager doesn't win the Champions League.
So you feel the constraints he puts on the players
100%.
Could cost him,
Why do these players play for Manchester City? Because they're the best players in the world.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got the best players in the world, you've got to give them freedom. Because the more you tell them, or the more you want to play the game for them, the more you restrict them, the more take freedom away from them, and that's what makes them good. You know, that's why they're there.
Yeah.
Let them express themselves, give them freedom, let them do. Obviously, they need a certain discipline and a formation to their game, but once the game starts, the manager can't play the game for them. And when you see him on the touchline, he wants to he comments everything.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Ancelotti.
You can see it right from the start tonight.
Ancelotti's got a heart rate of 55. He's got his nicotine chewing gum in his mouth, and he just says, you know, I trust my players.
Yeah.
Whatever I do now, well, I can't do anything because the players can't hear you. He trusts them. He says, you do the job for me. And this is something he doesn't do. And you've got situations in games where you have to do something off the cuff. And too often in the past at Manchester City, they didn't do it because I think he takes a responsibility away from his team.
Yeah. So the pressure is still very much on Pep Guardiola to deliver the Champions League at Manchester City, and only time will tell this season if he can do it or not. But tonight he can bask in the reflected glory of a fantastic 7-0 victory, one way or the other. Let's have a look at the second half goals, Lisa, starting with Gundogan's goal.
Yeah, and this is a great goal, and a goal that he really deserved. And you can see here, the ball comes out, De Bruyne slots it inside, Haaland dropping in deep, which he was doing all night, and Gundogan receives it in acres of space. Ball comes back across from Grealish, and then he does really well, and he just tucks it in the bottom corner. But this is really symptomatic of the way that Pep set the team up tonight. You can see Stones, who was the right back in the formation, in the box in the midfield, creating that 4v3 overload, and Leipzig did not deal with it the whole night. Then you see that gives the licence to Gundogan to be really, really high. And this is where he loves to be, not picked up on the edge of the box. And that player on the edge of the D is John Stones, who's the right back. So they've three players framing the edge of the box if the ball comes back out. And it's a small tactical tweak, but Leipzig never dealt with it the whole night. They couldn't figure out how to stop that, and that's where all their problems came from.
Yeah, and they never dealt with Haaland either, and the constant threat that he was posing, did he? And we're going to look at his fourth goal now, and this, in fact, was his 32nd goal in only 25 Champions League matches.
Well, I think it's fair to say they handled him poorly. It's a great leap by him. Bernardo Silva does ever so well. He knows he can't score, put it back in the danger zone. It's a great leap, gets great power on that header, and then he's alert, he's aware. Ball comes back out, Blažević volleyballs it back to him, and then he's just got that the killer instinct when the ball is in the box. You know, the best centre forwards, when the ball is close to them, when the ball is in the 6-yard box, they come alive. And obviously he's got brilliant strength, his pace, his power, but he's almost like Inzaghi in his days. When he gets a chance here again, the ball is cleared and he's just in the right place, and he side-foots it into the far corner. His finishing is just brilliant, both feet. Also does it on his weaker foot here. You know, it's not an easy finish. It comes pretty quick to him, and he just puts it in the corner. Brilliant. And
he places that, like, he's so deliberate about where he puts that.
And now I know you have a soft spot for Kevin De Bruyne, so nobody shouted louder in the studio than Lisa when De Bruyne got his goal, but his performance deserved a goal, didn't it?
Honestly, anyone who loves football can't but adore how he plays the game. He's just such a sensational player. The vision he has, the way he just shifts the ball, creates that extra little bit of space. To be fair, he's in acres. At that level, you wouldn't expect a player to have that level of space, but the technique, the vision, the accuracy, the execution, the pace on the ball, and he knows exactly where he's putting it from the minute he puts his head down. He doesn't even look up to see where it's going. It's exquisite, and he's a unique player in the world. And I think Pep said what he said this week to get a reaction out of him. He knows how to deal with the player, and like someone like Kevin De Bruyne, did he feel that he was maybe becoming a little bit lazy because Haaland was there and maybe he wasn't necessarily working as hard in the game as he normally did, get back to basics, and he said that the goals would come, and if Kevin De Bruyne is going to get into that kind of space, and even for the second goal, I think it was when he hit the shot, come back off the crossbar, like he had no space to hit that. And, he's a technically stunning player. He
is absolutely great to watch when he's in form, and Kevin De Bruyne certainly was right back at it tonight. Yeah, he was more than happy with the performances of Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne this evening. And we were keeping an eye on Haaland, needless to say, apart from the goals, what else he was doing throughout the game, Lisa. And his work rate was impressive tonight, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Like he did the dirty work as well as putting the ball in the back of the net. And this is, again, the build-up to the second goal. And you can see how hard he presses here. Links up with De Bruyne and desperately trying to get out of the way to give him the space to take the shot. But again, that instinctive following in. But like the 3-0 up at this point, it's the start of the second half, and here he goes in. A little bit of a press, but he sends the ball. They know where the ball is going, and then he goes in, doesn't let it off, and he winning the throw in. Like, you know, you're 3-0 up, and that just shows that relentless attitude. And this is what Pep was talking about Haaland, that he wants more from him. It's not just about being in the box and scoring goals. He wants all his players involved in all moments of the game, contributing all the time. So he's pressing. He's not just pressing, he's double pressing. He'll press the centre back, then he'll go, and here you see him trying to make a run. Doesn't work out for him. He's the nearest defender, goes and presses the goalkeeper, almost wins it back. And again, turn over the ball, and he's pressing again. And that's what Pep is talking about when he's talking about his players not just being involved in singular moments of the game. And that's what he was also talking about with De Bruyne. He was talking there again about the rhythm, being moving all the time. If you get into that rhythm of the game where you're always... Pep doesn't want players who just appear in the game. He wants players to live in the game.
One thing he also mentioned during that interview, Didi, was the fact that they've always scored goals, and he mentioned a number of their bigger wins at home. And he did imply that it was defensively that they've been found out in previous campaigns. But having said that, would there be a certain irony in the fact that maybe Haaland is the player who could help them win the Champions League this season?
Yeah, but you need a balance in your team, and if you've got you won't win a Champions League if you haven't got a good defence and a good goalkeeper. I think they got both. They probably didn't have it in the past, because if you don't defend well, then your offense suffers as well, because you need a balance to your side, and I think Ruben Dias made a big difference since he came to the club. And Akanji, I know him from Dortmund, a hugely talented player, just made too many mistakes, but he seems to have ironed these mistakes out, because since he came to City he hardly made a mistake. Stones is very versatile, he's very comfortable on the ball, and Ake is doing a job as well. And you know, at the moment they weren't tested today, so we shouldn't. This is not a benchmark to tonight, but defensively they looked relatively solid in recent weeks and months. Yeah, and possibly something for City to build on for the rest of the campaign. It'll be very interesting to watch them through the rest of this Champions League campaign.